Welcome back for episode 3 of the Pain and Performance Perspective, a podcast brought to you by me, Nick Raffini, and my co-host, Rachel Mann. If you've ever stressed about finding a starting point for your chronic pain or symptoms, then you're in the right place. From beginner drills to the mentality behind it, this episode is filled with goodies. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't even get to the starting point of dealing with their pain, right? Similarly to the situation we were just talking about, and I've done plenty of times, we just let things go on way too long. We never want to approach our pain or any of our symptoms. So a point we were just talking about off air is that you don't have to really feel like you need to stop your life. Or if you're in some sort of sports or performance, you don't need to stop what you're doing. You can approach where you are with what you have and do what you can now. And this was a big point for me, especially with weightlifting, because people in the gym, bodybuilders that are like-minded with me, really just want to go in and kill it every single time. And if they can't go in there and just give 100%, they don't even want to try, or they don't even want to think about having to slow down. So with trying to find like this starting point with people, how would you help their mentality in thinking that it doesn't have to end and stop what they're doing? Like they can continue what they're doing, right? But it's just maybe smaller exercises along the way. How would you help them with that mentality?
I would say the starting point with that mentality is whatever their health is showing us right now is what we need to work with. So I understand that you used to be able to go to the gym and kill it and kill it and kill it, but look where you are now. So did that actually work out for you? No, it didn't. But we think that we're a victim to it because we see all of this media about, you got to train to failure every set, and you got to go to the gym 5 days a week, and you got to do this and you got to do that. But people aren't actually learning their own bodies. So we're following whatever guru is saying. We don't know the gym is 10% of it, right? So you're going to the gym, you're doing these really intense, hard training sets all the time. What is your home life like outside of it? What are your responsibilities? Are you a parent? Are you trying to have kids? Are you a woman or are you a man? Do you work a full-time job? Is your job stressful? Are you in school? Like there's so many other factors that complete our health. Also, what is your diet like? Are you a recovering vegan? Or do you only eat muscle meats? Are you low carb all the time? Did you do keto for an extended period of time? Did you have eating disorders in the past? So all of these life events are building us up to where our health is right now. So
So
if
even
someone
if
comes,
so
go
even
ahead.
if someone comes to you, let's say I've got a particular pain on my right side, maybe it's a rotator cuff issue. I really feel it on, say, the bench press, for example. You would still outline all these different factors before even starting.
Absolutely. Because I need a detailed history to even understand where to start. So this right shoulder could actually be that you sprained your left ankle 7 years ago,
Mm.
and we actually need to work your left ankle so that the shoulder pain can get better. If on a history form, for example, like if someone is identifying that they have motion sickness issues or fatigue issues or chronic low back pain, chronic knee pain, all of that is going to point me to even look at like the inner ear system, because a lot of
Mm.
our nerve issues can actually be vestibular issues. So it could be as simple as someone, if they're doing a bench press, I might need them to give me a head turn while they're bench pressing. So we're activating those inner ear canals.
Interesting. Now, on the other side of the coin, someone with like really debilitating chronic pain or symptoms, you can see why that would be an advantage, right? You have a systemic issue. You want to look at the full lifestyle, any problems in the past, surgeries, history, stuff like that. But what I think the point we're trying to make here for the listener at home is that even if you think it might be something just wrong with like your rotator cuff on a bench press, you still should probably approach it like somebody who does need that systemic help, because you don't really know, especially if you've been training for 10, 20 years and you've been pushing through it for most of that same time too. I mean, gosh, like you really have to pull it back. You pull your mindset back and say, okay, I'm going to look at all these different factors. Um, I want to put a mindset piece onto that. Like you can't be scared to do that and find out what's going on. A lot of people, they'll say, oh, I don't want to find out because it'll just get in my head and just make me weak. But on the kind of my argument is kind of the opposite to that. If anything, it will increase your open mindedness. It will help you sit back and say, okay, if I really am open minded enough to improve and get better, I need to start looking at other factors. That's the only other way. Sherlock Holmes was famous for in the novels that if no other evidence led to a particular case, he had to look at ones that other people deemed was absolutely preposterous. Now, this happens a lot in real life, but we know at the end of a lot of the novels, he ended up being right. So we're kind of like being a version of the Sherlock Holmes for people um, to get their mentality around that it's going to help them long term in that process. Um, um, and doesn't and two also it doesn't have to slow you down in the interim, like say that weightlifter has like a competition coming up and he needs to be able to bench press. There's different factors that you can take into consideration and say, okay, maybe for the short interim, the next 6 to 12 weeks or something, we could do something short term. But after that, after your competition, or you say if you have a sponsorship or you need to be there, contract, then we can approach it and take the step back. So even if you're bedridden to your world-class performing athlete, there's ways to approach this in different ways. And I think I wanted to just get kind of a starting point for some particular examples and people that they feel like they don't have to stop. Is there any
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm also speaking from the standpoint, most people that come to me, they've already done PT, they've already done XYZ. So if,
Mm.
for example, you're coming to me with shoulder pain, you can't bench press, but you've already been in PT for a torn rotator cuff or thoracic outlet syndrome, or I'm just naming off some of the common ones, or carpal tunnel. Traditional PT didn't work for you, working your shoulder didn't work for you. I'm probably not going to start with your shoulder.
I'm
It's
sure
just
some
kind of
people are
telling
raising
me.
their eyebrows at home now going,
Yeah.
hmm.
But that's also why their first session with me, we did the first 30 minutes is doing a neuroflow assessment, which I'm basically just testing all the different structures of your brain. So even if you're coming to me with a shoulder problem, I'm I'm gonna assess everything first
Could you
and
walk
then
us
go
through
from
that?
there. Sure. So
I'd love
like
it
for
too.
example, um, I'm gonna look at your gait first and foremost, and then I'm gonna figure out there's 4 different gaits that we follow in neuro.
Which is
So
this for those listening, that's the style of how you walk over a few steps. You just visually look at them just
yeah,
casually.
so instead of being like, oh, okay, so like of course I'm looking at like, are their knees caving in or out? Are their ankles caving in or out? I'm also looking at like, what are your hands doing? Are they swinging enough? Is your head moving? It's a very
Mm.
thorough analysis. From there, I'm going to immediately go into like some cerebellar testing, which your cerebellum controls your accuracy, your coordination, and your balance. So when I test your cerebellum, we're also doing upper body, left and right, lower body, left and right. From there, I'm then going to test like all 12 cranial nerves, which testing those is a lot of visual tests, smelling tests, trying to think of everything.
Cranial, I'm thinking, means just up towards the head. So all the nerves that are associated with stuff around the senses, the face.
But one thing I need to emphasize is we are one big nerve. So it's
Mm.
all connected. So even if like I see, for example, you know, cranial nerve 4 isn't acting great, that also tells me like, all right, we need to tap into the midbrain or the pons, and all people really need to know about that is I'm just trying to figure out, why is this shoulder deciding that it's threatening to move a bench press? So it's not as
Mm.
simple as, but like a simple fix for someone who's having like pain with a bench press, we might need to have you do isometrics. Maybe the concentric is too much on your nervous system right now. So maybe we need you to just hold it and then push it back up. Same with changing
Mm.
people's training speeds. Like we're always taught like, oh, like slow and then pause for muscle growth. Maybe your vestibular system freaking hates that and you need to go fast. But we're always
Mm.
changing. So even if this works for someone for like 3 weeks and then they're like, yo, the pain's back. Cool, whatever. Now we know that that's not working for you. We got to figure out what else is working for you.
Mm. But it sounds like that initial screening is quite important.
And not everyone is as detailed as I am. And I come from a standpoint of my rehab was everything but the kitchen sink thrown at me. And I really should have had like a proper hand holding, like, let's walk you through this. Um, One
Well,
thing
that
I want to emphasize real quick is you can look in shape and you can be absolutely like not healthy at all. I was dismissed. I think I had a different story with doctors because it was like, oh, this chick has a six pack and she works out every day. Even like my
yeah.
PTs were like, you're in great shape. And I'm like, but like literally walking into your office killed me. And there's a lot of lifters out there that I know feel that way. Like
This
we
goes
look
back to your
good.
this goes back to your connection of the nervous system and the disconnect from just your muscle, right? You can have great muscle tone and great muscular structure, but your nervous system and body itself can be a wreck. And we see that all
And
too
I
often.
and
Sorry to
I'm
cut you off.
even no, you're fine. One thing that I see with brainstem issues on people is one side is super developed and the other one isn't. So I'm even looking at global
Interesting.
muscle tone on people.
Did you say brain stem? Like an issue with the
Yeah.
actual brain stem, like the base of the nervous system? Wow. Wow.
So if you have one side that's really developed and then another side that isn't very developed, that's telling me that that other side needs a little bit of love. And that might mean that we have you doing isometrics on that one side for 6 weeks so this shoulder feels better. It could
Yeah,
even be that
for
you're
those at home, that's not like when you go and bit a front double, one arm is, quarter, half inch smaller. This is a systemic. Your brain stem is not sending signals to that side of the body as strongly. Like you have to take a real step back and try to realize what's going on. Wow.
otherwise it's just a compounding effect. Because we always think
Right.
like
Until
when
you
we're
die,
speaking
because it
in
never goes away.
yeah, we're speaking in terms of like uh when you're speaking in terms of like musculature, it's like, yeah, but why is one side stronger than the other? So for example, if
Yeah.
you're doing a shoulder press, this side of my brain is doing voluntary movement. What do you think this side is doing? It's stabilizing you. Otherwise, you would fall over.
Mm, mm,
So if you're having issues with stabilization, of course this side hurts because it's working overtime so you can do this. So maybe we need to
mm.
work on stabilizing you here. For me, this was like one of the coolest drills I found. I actually put a band around my waist. So I had to work my stabilizers more while doing a squat. So it had nothing to do with this idea of like,
Mm.
oh, I'm taking pressure off a joint or my spine. It was I'm trying to activate my brainstem right now and my vestibular system to keep me in correlation with gravity so I can improve. So people need to know that their rehab
Mm.
can be done during training. You don't need to spend like an hour doing your rehab and then go train. I want you rehabbing
Well
while you
said.
train.
Well said. Yeah,
There's
it's a part
no,
of the training session. For you now, it becomes even more specialized.
or it could be if someone's having shoulder pain, maybe I need you doing wrist circles in between each set. It doesn't have to be this like
Mm.
very intricate, complicated. Maybe I need you to look off to the left upper corner during the set instead of looking
Gosh.
straight head on.
And I'm
So
sure
it's like
people are in fear that their careers or their health on the line are at stake, and it could be something simple like this.
I I had a client and his left arm, the best way to explain it, like when you do a tricep push down, it's pretty easy to just push it down. This left side, every time he went to push down, it was like,
I was just
I
fighting.
mean, yeah. And I was like, all
Hmm.
right, like let me just add some proprioceptive. So I just like, touched like where you should be feeling the muscle. Nothing was working. So then I was like, I want you to turn your head. I was like, keep your eyes straight on this target in
Good.
front of you and turn your head to the right. So he did that, and then when he did the push down, his arm didn't jolt up anymore, and it was a vestibular issue.
Incredible.
So it's
And then when he performed it, did he also was he able to tell like, oh, that felt different, or he noticed it?
yeah, he like stood back and was like, "What did you just do to me?"
Witchcraft.
I was like, my wand.
That's amazing. Wow. And now
And
you've got a whole handful of these stories now, though, of course.
well,
Can I
yeah,
bring it back to the point about where you mentioned the hand holding and being
yeah.
able to support people? That was kind of where we were headed next to. And I mean, that isn't necessarily hand holding, but kind of moving from there, he might still need help in that transition to getting back to full connection, because that wouldn't necessarily stop there, right? That could keep going, like you're talking about the whole brainstem issue. So if people think it might be a quick fix and are interested in it, what would you say to help wrap their head around the hand holding part and this having the support through the changes? You know, when things get bad, when they're in a flare, having issues, and they're like, nah, okay, I don't want to do my exercises and I don't want to get the help. You know, how do they stick out and stick through it?
So one, it's this idea that I'm giving you the tools to heal yourself, but you're not in it alone. I don't just do a session with you and then I don't care. If your exercises aren't working for you, communicate. Communicate before you're like all hope is lost. Because I can say from experience, any of the rehab drills that I used to do when I found neuro coaching, none of them work for me anymore. I had to find new ones because your brain is constantly going to keep whatever you're practicing, your brain's going to get really good at. That's the same thing. Like if you're constantly practicing that shoulder pain, you're going to get really good at having shoulder pain. So when you're stuck in that victim mode, instead of thinking like, "Wah, I gotta go through this alone and no one understands me," that's not true. That's absolutely not true. You need to ask out for support. I think a lot of my journey was sidelined because I would go back into these cocoon phases of I'm flared up, no one can help me, I don't want anyone around me. That's like the last thing your nervous system needs.
Mm.
If your nervous system is like shutting down, you're in a flare up, everything hurts, whatever your symptoms are, I highly doubt you spending time alone in your bed crying all day thinking, how will I get better is going to help because you're just reiterating that narrative. You're having symptoms because your nervous system is saying, I need something. So if you're just back in the same old cycle of no one can help me, I've always been in pain, I'm helpless, you're reiterating that same narrative.
Yeah.
So with
Maybe the first step is saying it's okay not to know, but it's not okay to say that there's nothing you can do.
it's, and I think I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. Accept that you're sick. Accept that you're in pain right now. But all you have to do is accept it right now. And then a couple minutes later, you accept it again. And then you accept it again. And then you accept it again. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be in pain forever. It just means you're accepting where you're at. So, like, okay, let's say I'm bedbound. And I've been bedbound quite a few times. So I'm bedbound. I can't really do anything. What's one thing that I could do? Well, I could write a sentence in my journal. I could take a sip of water. I could call a friend and say, I'm having a really bad day. I'm bedbound. Those are all action steps versus I'm going to sit here quietly, put on some sad music that puts me in an even worse mood.
It's easy to ruminate in that environment. Absolutely.
Ruminating is, and rumination is also, it's a response from the brain to keep you safe. When you're dealing with pain, ruminating on the pain is a safety mechanism. And it's really hard to break out of that cycle. I mean, I still deal with it daily where I'm like, but what do I need to do to make this feel better? What do I, is it, do I need to eat? Do I need to do this?
Yeah,
And
sorry, I was
sometimes
just
you,
taking a second to kind of positively ruminate on the fact that I don't negatively ruminate like that much anymore. Just kind of take some practice to try to dig yourself out of that hole, because when it happens some of the first times, it's the most impactful. So starting out, you're kind of um, in much more of a kind of what is this and why is it happening to me scenario. But like you said, with the accepting, you can kind of disconnect what you're actually doing about it to the way that it's making you feel physically, and kind of your spirit can utilize the the positive mindset versus just letting the pain take over the mindset and kind of letting that feed itself.
And
This is really powerful.
one thing I'm trying to work with on my clients, we don't speak in symptoms, we speak in how we're feeling. So
Hmm.
I know your back hurts, I know your sciatica sucks, I know this and that, but how are you feeling today? What did you do today? What did you do last night?
Hmm.
Because all of these little snippets matter. I also want to know, it takes me, like, someone can book one session with me, but I'm not going to like fully understand your nervous system unless you work with me for at least a month, because it's ebbs and flows.
Hmm.
I had someone, and we were working on their bench, and it ended up being an auxiliary nerve slack, and then we had him doing some different wrist mobility drills and some elbow mobility, and it got him better. But I also found out that he always benched on a Thursday, and Thursday was when he had this really stressful Zoom meeting with all of the people at his work. So, yeah, we found tools that helped him in the immediate moment, but we also switched the schedule to bench on Tuesday because bench was really important to him when he didn't have so much stress from work that day.
What a powerful, beautiful, simple example. It's amazing. That's no extra exercise. That's no extra drill. Just a lifestyle change, scheduling change. Really, not even really changing his lifestyle. Hmm.
My favorite tool to use with people is colored glasses, um, because it's the simplest little fix. For example, like when I go in a gym, I would feel really anxious also because that's where all my injuries happen. So I have like a neuro tag that every time I go in the gym, I'm gonna be in pain or something bad's gonna happen. So when I would wear like these green glasses, it would kind of like soothe my nervous system
Hmm.
because it was a different color receptor than all these fluorescent lights.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, um, someone might need red glasses because it's putting their nervous system, it's not neurologically taxing to have red light. So they may need a lot of inhibition where someone else might need activation.
Interesting. I see. It's completely different. Wow.
So
These
everyone's very different.
yeah, these are all tons of examples. Wow. I want to delve into each one specifically, but maybe I'll have a follow up question because we these are just really changes. But what might be a particular exercise or like a vestibular or limbic exercise that you would challenge somebody with to see like where they might have some problems
So the
in the
first,
athletic space.
oh, and I start everyone kind of the same place. Um, the vestibular testing that I initially do, we're gonna do, it's called Romberg's. They'll do it with you if you're in any kind of neurological exam. We just we do the test and then we rehab and then we test again. So it's a lot of assessments throughout it because I want to see, did it directly impact your nervous system in real time. So an example of vestibular training would be, I'm going to go with someone who's a healthy athlete. So someone, they're a healthy athlete, they come to me, they have some kind of, let's say for example, they have knee pain. Okay. So I'm gonna test their balance system. What I'll have them do is I'll have them stand up with their feet straight together, and I'm gonna have them pick a target in front of them, and I'm just having them stare at that target for 30 seconds. After they do that, I'm gonna have them close their eyes, and then I'm gonna watch, does their body sway?
Hmm.
So if their eyes are closed and their body starts swaying, I'm like, okay. And then I see, are they swaying left to right? Is it a circle? Is it back and forth? And I'll ask them, did you feel that you were moving? If they say no, I'm like, okay, definitely vestibular issue. If they say yes, I'm like, okay, cool, we have the awareness. Let's work with that.
Hmm.
From there, I would have them go on one leg, eyes open, still staring at the target. 30 seconds there, close their eyes. Most people, when I have them stand on one leg and close their eyes, they're going to fall over. Most people,
Sounds
even
easy
healthy
enough.
people.
Sounds
It
easy enough.
sounds easy, but when you get to it, it's like, so I'll see, okay, we'll do a left and right. Let's say that this athlete, their right side was more unstable. I'm immediately going to go into some vestibular training. So the first thing I would do is they're going to stare at a target in front of them. Their eyes are going to stay on that target, and I'm going to have them turn to their left a couple times. We'll retest the right, see if the balance improved. But when I'm going to the left, I'm actually activating that right inner ear canal. But there's different directions. So there's 8 different directions. So it might be we need to go to the left, we might need to go up and left, down and left, straight up, straight down. It might even be that we need to go really slow and fast back. Slow, fast back. So there's a lot of different, even when it comes to vestibular training, we have to keep tweaking it until we find out, like, okay, is that what they really need? They may actually need that vestibular canal instead of more inhibited. So the way that I would approach that, instead of having them keep their eyes on a target and go left, we're going to follow the target.
Interesting.
So
The difference being between the fluidity of the reaction.
it would be, did their balance improve? Did their pain improve? I do a lot of range of motion testing with people.
Okay. Wow.
So a lot of times when we're doing vestibular stuff, like I might just, let's say that they're a boxer, so I'm gonna test their like external and internal rotation of their shoulder. And if it improved, that tells me, cool, your nervous system liked that. If it got worse, your nervous system didn't like that.
I see.
So it's a lot of,
Wow.
does your brain like that or does it not?
Yeah, this is so incredibly personalized. Are these specific examples from people that you've worked with recently? Yeah, or
People
potentially
that,
at the expo? I mean, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the expo, how that went. If you're doing another one soon, and then you could finish where people will find you and be a nice little sign off here.
yeah. So at the expo, I didn't do much training with people. People were more interested in the conversation. But there were quite a few women I talked to with TMJ. And if anyone isn't familiar with TMJ, it's really, really awful jaw pain. And a lot of times, like if you're in a flare up of it or you just got recently diagnosed, you can like barely talk. So you're kind of talking like this because
Oh,
it hurts
this
so
is all
bad.
the time during the day. Oh, wow. I thought this was like when you wake
Yeah.
up in the morning from doing it at night, but this is
Yeah. When I had TMJ, I couldn't eat for 3 months. I had to drink everything. So what we did,
anyway. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Wow.
one lady, she told me that her TMJ, it was on the left side. And she said 3 months before she had broken her left ankle. So what we actually did is we moved that left ankle some. I didn't see much payoff. So I was like, all right, let's try the right. So we did a couple figure eights with that right ankle, and it
The
was
compensating one. Right.
the
Right.
right ankle because your right ankle, the force from your right ankle will transmit up your leg, across your back, and into this jaw. So she was having some hypermobility in that right ankle. Left jaw was locked. We did a couple figure eights. Left jaw pain went back. From there, I actually showed her like how to like manually release her jaw, and then she was able to like open her mouth without pain. So it was like
Unbelievable.
that was a 10-minute session.
Gosh, this just rounds out the whole episode just like that. If no one can have any other takeaways, it would be just please get over the fear of reaching out and like feeling like your quality of life can't change because literally it's only going to get worse if you do nothing. And it could be something really simple like this. And like when you couldn't eat for 3 months, how long has it been an issue for her? And if someone who's training and exercising can only eat liquid foods for 3 months. If they've got a competition coming up, forget about it. If they've got a graduation or some sort of regular life event coming up, forget about it. Anyways, I don't want to
Yeah.
get too worked up. But anything else significant from the expo? You're doing another one soon?
I also helped a lady that had sciatica for 6.5 years, and we did a
Okay.
peroneal nerve slack, and she didn't have sciatica anymore. So when people are like,
Wow.
I've tried everything, I'm like, I don't believe you.
This goes back to the open-mindedness. You've got to be open-minded enough to scare yourself to step back and approach things that you haven't approached before.
And I'm not, and I will admit, I'm not always confident. Like I tell
Oh,
them,
of
I'm like,
course.
we're gonna try something. I have no, like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think sometimes people aren't willing to try.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Something different, right?
I'll even give an example for me. My sciatica, it starts like at the base of my skull and it goes all the way down my back to my leg. So we kept trying different nerve glides, like with my lower body, with my thoracic spine, with my spinal cord, and then I learned how to do like a trigeminal nerve glide on the opposite side, and it helped the pain down my back tremendously.
Hmm.
Um, and it was one of those like,
Miraculous.
really? So one takeaway I want to tell people too, if you are having some kind of nerve problem, we are one big nerve. So if like attacking that nerve directly, because there are a lot of really awesome PTs and doctors who do some stuff with the nerves. If attacking that one nerve didn't help you, that just tells me that we need to go after different nerves.
Yeah. There's only so many, right? That's such a
There's
good
only
point.
there's only
Like
16 peripheral nerves. We can test them all.
you're going to have one body forever, so you can eventually get to that all. That's a great place to stop. Next time I want to talk about that connection a little bit more for like the meatheads in the room to like, okay, what are
Yeah,
they on about? Like, how does that help me deadlift more weight? And then the three techniques you were talking to me about getting after those nerves. And then I want to ask some stupid questions and see get your thoughts on some other techniques that claim to have impact on the nerves and maybe some other devices. If that sounds cool for next time.
sounds wonderful.
Sweet. Well, thank you again for this, Rachel. Again, we got about 30 seconds to tell them where to find you, where to get you and all your new programs.
So I recently have changed my business. Instead of being evolved, it is now Rachel Mann Neuroembodiment Coaching. You can find me at my website. It's rachel-mann.com. Um, Current packages I'm offering are a one session package, 3 session package, or a 3 and 6 month container.
Ooh, clever. Okay. I'll make sure and link all that below, all the updated links and everything, but I'll have both of
Sweet.
our social media if you can find it, if you want to find us and ask us any questions. Thanks again, Rachel.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Interstellar, and I'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.